Good evening. Welcome to the March 21st Newmarket Planning Board meeting. Will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is public comments. Does anybody out there have anything to say about any subject that is not on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll close the public comment section. Next is acceptance of minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of February 14.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay.
And I'll abstain.
Next is election of officers. I think we'll start by entertaining a motion for the chair. Does anyone want to volunteer to be the chair?
I'll make a motion to nominate Eric to serve as chair.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, any discussion, any other nominations? I may resign, you know. No. All right, all those in favor of electing me chairperson, say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. How about vice chair? Any nominations for vice chair?
I'll make a motion that we nominate Valerie Shipman as vice chair.
I'll second it. Only if Eric doesn't resign.
Any discussion? All those in favor of electing Val as the vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. All right, on to regular business. First on the agenda is SCG Management Corp., 2nd Bennett Way Limited Partnership pursuant to RSA 674:35 and 676:4 ID in Appendix B, Site Plan of the Municipal Code of the Town of Newmarket, New Hampshire. There will be a continuation of a public hearing for an application for major site plan review requested by SCG Management Corp., 2nd Bennett Way Limited Partnership for property located at 4 Bennett Way, tax map U4, lot 4-1 within the B1 zoning district. The proposed application seeks approval to develop the east side of the parcel with a 2-story, 12-unit building with associated parking and amenities. Michael, are you solo tonight?
Yeah.
All right.
I need to recuse myself from these two discussions because we've had survey services.
Okay.
Should I say here?
No, I still would sit out there just to give you a separation. So for board members to remember and for those at home, this was approved for 24 units several years ago. It was never built, so it's technically grandfathered in. The proposal before us is for 12 units, and if I remember correctly, at a previous meeting, we were fine with everything except stormwater. I think you left here, Michael, with
I did.
requirement to meet with the town engineer and resolve any stormwater questions. So that's the base here. Can you give us an update on where we are,
Yes.
please?
Are these the latest?
I believe they are.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Can I just use those? If you push, you can.
Yeah, I can navigate while you talk.
Yeah, so last time we were here, and I'm Mike Sievert with Horizons Engineering, but last time we were here, and Scott is also here if you have any questions from SCG, so. Last time we were here, we had shown the same design. The layout hasn't changed, with the exception of just the drainage layout. And what we had done last time was put those little circles over here are and infiltration system that was designed and approved at the, back in 2004. And so we were utilizing that and then putting a rain garden up front in that south, I guess,
Southeast.
easterly corner there. And we went away from the last meeting and found out that this system right here, so this system right here, which was these 5 basins, and they're 8-foot diameter.
And Mike, can I pause? Can you grab the mic? I think it is mobile.
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So those basins are 8-foot diameter. They're underground. They've got holes in them, so they infiltrate into the ground. And there's an overflow pipe that goes to this culvert that flows across the next road there, which I can't remember the name, but it's a town road up behind the police station. And then it goes into the New Hampshire Housing Authority's property and down through that property and then outlets into Moonlight Brook, picking up all that drainage through there. Last time we left here, and there was an easement for that, on that property, in favor of this property to drain through there back in 2004 or so when this all happened. Since we've left here, we tried to do some camera work up there to figure out what the problems were in that drainage system. The town DPW director is having some drainage problems right around here, before the road, and then there's all kinds of problems with the drainage system down there. So we ended up deciding that we can't even use that outlet, or we'd have to rebuild the whole thing, it looks like. So we came back and ended up redesigning this larger pond here, added a couple more of these underground basins, and then we're going to disconnect that. These aren't actually the latest plans, I don't think.
Okay, yeah. Is it-
But I can
yeah.
work with that. We're going to disconnect this pipe and this overflow right here, and this long pipe right here, it'll come across the property and tie into the drainage on Bennett Way, will now be the overflow. So this will take a little bit more water, a little bit more infiltration. And then this rain garden right here was put in with some sediment forebays and stuff to collect basically a line across here. Everything goes this way and everything goes that way. But now, instead of this going out that way, everything comes down through the Bennett Way drainage system.
And that's all been worked on with Rick and the town engineer?
Lindsay and Rick and everybody. And so what we've done, or what we were able to do, was reduce all the flows. The soils on the easterly side of the property are superb. They're all sand, really good sand. And on the westerly side of the property, it's pretty good. You know, it's not a sand pit, but it's pretty nice. So we changed a couple things from back in 2004 to make that work a little less good because of the soils we found there, but this one out front is fabulous. And we get a bunch of infiltration from the one on the east, a decent amount from the one on the west, and then in the higher storms, there is some outflow to the Bennett Way system. But there's a significant decrease in the peak flows, which are shown in the drainage report, and to the tune of like I think in a 50-year storm there was 3.5 CFS coming out of that easterly corner there, and now there's 1.5. So there's a significant decrease. Because I'm pushing all the water to that corner instead of letting some go back out the other to the west, there is a small increase in the volume of water that goes out over time.
But that's only in peak flow?
Yeah, that's over
50-year
the
storm.
storm or the peak flow, but it's a small increase in volume, like less than 2,000 cubic feet in a 50-year storm, so pretty small.
Excuse me, so that goes out to 108,
That does go out.
ties into the 108 system.
Yeah.
Correct.
So the good news is that we've reduced all the flows going to the system that can't take it. The second thing is that outlet's right to Moonlight Brook, and it's right above the culvert that's behind my old office here at the where the railroad track is. And
The
then
gas
it goes
station,
into
right?
that reduced culvert under the gas station there, which you know what happened last time to that. So we've taken that all away now, and even though we're increasing that slightly to this other system, it is a lot longer track to get back to the Moonlight Brook or system. And now, I mean, it's not a brook anymore because it's underground in a pipe, but it does go in down below that restricted area at that gas station there. So there's a couple benefits to going the other way, even though there is a small increase there, so.
Okay.
When the town did, when you worked with this with Lindsay and Mike, did they also incorporate in the changes to the new development that hasn't been built yet? The Walter Cheney development? Because I think
The-
that's now connected into the same
Yes.
drainage system.
Yeah, yes. So that system, that had a decrease too, because I have that detention pond out back there. I don't remember what that was, but that had a small decrease in the drainage system down there. So together, these wouldn't be a problem for that system. And that system, there aren't any issues in that system downstream there that we found out or talked about. Yeah. So I think that will be fine.
Okay, thank you. Any board members have questions? Anybody from the public have any questions, comments? All right, I think we should talk about waivers, or potential waivers. You have one waiver for the scale, which is,
That's right.
right?
I think I submitted that last time.
We're gonna close public comment.
Hopefully.
We're gonna do that before this?
Talk about.
Yeah. All right, so I'm closing public comments. There were no public comments, I'm sorry. So you have a waiver for the scale. And then, Bart, are there any other questions about waivers? May or may not be required?
Yeah, 304, pedestrian, bicycle, and transit amenities. Mike, can you maybe speak to how many residents you're planning on having there? I know it's 12 units, but I can't remember. It's 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom?
If you're gonna
Yeah,
speak, Scott,
Scott, if you want to.
you need to, and identify yourself, please.
Scott Foster, SCG Management. They're all 2 bedrooms. Originally, it was 24 units, 2 bedrooms, and now it's 12 units with 2 bedrooms. The apartments themselves are a little larger, but than originally. You're looking at probably between 11 and 1,300 square feet. But it is definitely 2 bedrooms, a living area, a dining area. There's no dens. There's nothing that can be turned into a 3rd bedroom.
Okay.
So what do you estimate the average occupancy will be?
Average, I would say, the average would probably be 2, because we probably will have some ones,
waiver.
and we may have some, some families with 1 child or something like that. We're limited with the space around it. We don't have play areas or anything like that, even with our current 278 apartments up there. It's pretty limited. We average I think we hit like 2.0 something right now with our current apartments up there per apartment.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So,
So that applies, 304, Mike, you'll need a waiver request for 304, which is the whole Coast bus,
Oh, is it the Coast bus?
Yeah, the input from
I have some
Coast.
bicycle racks, right? Is that, so we're talking about the,
Yeah, it's just basically input from
Okay.
Coast
yeah.
on the development, so that'll be a request if you want it.
yes,
Are you looking for a waiver for that,
yeah,
in writing? Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I mean, you don't want me to handwrite it, right now, do you?
if you want to, I have no objection to that.
Just send something over.
you have a napkin? Just send it in.
I wouldn't even know what to say, so.
Okay, anything else, Bart? Like,
Just, I don't know if it was a waiver, but just more, so ADA, so I'm looking at, 311. The slope sidewalk detail, I didn't see it there.
I
It
thought-
might be there.
Yeah, I had it on one of those detail sheets, tipping that down.
Let's see it. My eyes are poor, I can't see there, so, yeah.
So I'll add that on, so I'm showing the tip downs at the parking
Right.
spaces
Yeah.
there,
So just a detail on that.
Yeah, definitely.
So, that's something that can be added potentially. Yeah, that'd be, all right.
yeah,
I think, I talked to Lindsay, town engineer, on 314, and she's fine with the details, so I think that's resolved. I mean, that's,
Not an issue?
314, yeah, not an issue.
Yep.
And then, just a detail on the lighting, and make sure that's, dark sky compliant, downward facing. I didn't see that on the detail sheet. This is, this is number 316. And then on 4.3, just revise the site plans to add the tax map number
Okay.
that was missing.
Isn't dark sky lighting a requirement?
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
we just need to see a detail, so we don't know what's going to look like, and we want to verify.
we just want to make sure that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all I have.
All right, so there's one additional waiver required, right? Okay. So everybody has, I think everybody's looking at the spreadsheet that Bart sent out. Bart actually,
One
okay.
more things, impact fees. Should we talk about that? Okay.
No, all right, so, you know, obviously, it's subject to the impact fees.
Sure.
And the impact fees are payable for each unit when you get,
Prior to CO.
a building permit,
Oh, okay.
right?
They're assessed upon building permit application.
Right.
And they're due prior to an occupancy permit for each unit.
Right.
Make a motion on the waivers?
Yes.
Make a motion, we waive sections 304, pedestrian, bicycle, and transit amenities, and the section 4.08, the scale.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of granting the waivers, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, so the waivers are approved. At this point, I think I should close the public hearing.
Yeah, we did.
I already did?
You did, yeah.
A public, oh, yeah.
Do you want Bart to go
The-
through his conditions?
Yes. Yes. All right, so Bart in his spreadsheet has, recommendations for approval, but he has some conditions, so why don't we go through the conditions, Bart,
Sure.
please?
So, conditions precedent, these are recommended. The site plan undergo a final review and receive approval from Director of Environmental Services and Town Engineer as it relates to development's water, sewer, and storm systems. So basically, this is, purpose of this is so we can find out if there's any changes or whatnot. It doesn't have to come back to the planning board. It's just kind of, refining if there's the details. And then number 2 is site plan shall be updated reflecting the comments made at the March 21st, 2023 staff notes dated March 17th, 2023, and all subsequent reviews by town staff as stated in condition number 1 above. Number 3, the applicant shall demonstrate that they provide data input to the PTAP database. And number 4, the applicant shall submit a revised site plan that has received final approval from town staff and have been endorsed by the planning board chair and subsequently recorded at the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds. And then conditions subsequent, which are following conditions subsequent as enumerated below, must be met prior to the commencement of construction. The applicant shall have a pre-construction meeting with town staff, and I just add another conditions that the applicant and the town work out a scope of work for construction management. We may have to go third party for Underwood, so we'll work out that. And then after that is following conditions subsequent as enumerated below must be met prior to the last issuance of certificate of occupancy. As-built plan shall be submitted and reviewed and approved by town Newmarket, and all impact fees paid in full.
Okay, does any members have any questions, comments, edits to?
I was at number
Above.
2, that all the subsequent review changes required by town staff as stated in condition 1.
Okay,
You're not just reviewing it, you might require changes.
Right.
Condition precedent number 2. So it's the staff notes dated March 17, 2023, and all subsequent review changes required by town staff as stated in condition 1 above. You added that third agreement, condition subsequent.
oh, yes, I had one on, the as-built. That should only, the as-built needs to be submitted prior to the occupancy permit being granted for the final unit,
Yeah. it's the
not,
last scene.
not the first unit, the last unit.
Yep.
And I actually had a note on the one on the construction.
Mhm.
Construction inspection is basically gonna be for utilities, right? For utilities only, tying into town utilities.
Yeah, utilities and I would say, like grading and stuff, site work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So construction and utilities and parking lot.
Yeah. That'd be number
No.
1.
amended.
And as part of that, it will be the agreement, right, on the
Yes.
scope of construction?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So does any board members have any questions, comments on any of this, the conditions?
Do we need to discuss vesting prior to voting
I don't know.
or after? I mean, this is
We
a
usually just say
format
it
for
after.
us.
We can say it afterwards.
Okay.
If I don't hear any more discussion, I'll entertain a motion for approval, subject to the conditions as laid out, basically, and amended.
Do we need to read the findings of fact into the minutes?
I think you
Or
can
can we
incorporate it.
incorporate that into the motion?
Just reference the,
Your update,
Yeah.
all right. And did the applicant receive a copy of this?
yes.
Any questions?
And I have made a bunch of changes. I mean, most of that stuff I've already made. And so-
Right, so
I got
just, yeah.
just other minor stuff. So no, I don't have any problems.
Okay. Val, you're up.
I'll make a motion to approve the application by SCG Management Corp., Second Benaway Limited Partnership, for to grant approval for major site plan review for property located at 4 Bennett Way, tax map U4, lot 4-11, within the B1 zoning district, to develop the east side of the parcel with a 2-story, 12-unit building with associated parking and amenities, as outlined in our findings of fact, recorded by the town planner as of March 17th, 2023, and subject to the conditions of approval on the planner's report as discussed and amended this evening.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion passes 6-0.
Great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Vesting.
Oh, we've got to talk about vesting, too. You can sit down, but
Well, he might object.
Yeah.
Like,
Can we just understand what your proposed timeline is?
Finding a builder. It's all going to come down to that. I mean, we're finishing up a couple final things, and then in a perfect world, we'd be breaking ground this fall. Cautiously optimistic. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'd like that to happen. If not, then I would say first thing in the spring.
So a 2-year time period is reasonable
Oh,
for breaking ground and doing your initial
yes.
infrastructure?
Yes, I definitely, barring any crazy changes in economy or something like that. But yes, the quicker we can get this done, the better.
And then you could always come back for modification. So, I'll make a motion that the site plan review approval should be deemed to have lapsed, should have deemed to have lapsed 24 months after the date of approval, unless active and substantial development has been completed within the said period as provided under RSA 674-39. For the purpose of vesting, the site plan approval shall be deemed to have permanent vesting upon completion of building and site improvements as shown on the plan. Active and substantial development shall occur after the grading and foundation work and installation of infrastructure, being parking, water, sewer, drainage structures, and underground utilities, is completed.
okay,
That's a change from what you have.
slightly.
Yeah, this one.
Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Any discussion, comments, edits? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Just want to read the appeal.
Oh, okay. So, for the record, this conditional approval is subject to all representations and statements made by the applicant and engineer to the planning board during the review process. Any appeal of the planning board's decision pursuant to RSA 677:15, any person aggrieved by any decision of the planning board may appeal that decision to the Superior Court within 30 days after the date upon which a planning board voted to approve or disapprove a site review application. Excellent. Congratulations. Okay, I'll read this.
You must have gotten a steal.
All righty. Moving on, next on the agenda is D.R. Lemieux. Is that how you say your name, sir? Yes. Lemieux? So, D.R. Lemieux Builders LLC, pursuant to RSA 672:3, RSA 676:4, 2B, C, and D, and 2.02 design review of Appendix A, subdivisions, and Appendix B, site plans of the municipal code of the town of Newmarket, New Hampshire. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing for an application for design review will be held, requested by D.R. Lemieux Builders LLC, located on real property with an address of 242 South Main Street, tax map U4, lot 69, within the R2 zoning district. The applicant seeks to engage with the planning board in a non-binding discussion relative to certain elements for a proposed 32-unit age-restricted multifamily development with the pertinent infrastructure and associated improvements. So before we get started, I just want to set a couple of ground rules. There's a lot of people here, and we certainly are interested in hearing everybody speak, but I would ask you to please limit your time speaking. I'm going to try to limit you to 5 minutes, and if people in front of you had come up and mentioned an issue, if we don't just have person after person repeating the same issue, that would be appreciated. Other than that, free to ask questions and do whatever you want to do. Good evening, sir.
Good evening,
Can we
Mr. Chair.
Just clarify that? So I think I just want to clarify that if you are coming up, but you have the same issue as someone who spoke before, just say you have the same issue, but
yeah,
we do
sure.
want to put you on the record.
Sure. Absolutely.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is FX Bruton, and I'm an attorney with Bruton and Barabee in Dover, and I have the pleasure of representing D.R. Lemieux Builders LLC. With me tonight are quite a few people. We're here for what is a non-binding design review. We're looking forward to exchanging our ideas and listening to your ideas and understanding them. With me is Dave Lemieux and Heather Dresch of the DR Lemieux Builders. In addition, you'll really be hearing from Christian Smith a lot more than me, which is probably good. He's with Beals and he's the project engineer. Brendan Walden from Gove Environmental is here as well as Mike Lasso and Robbie Woodburn, architect and landscape architect. Basically, this project is, and I'm sure you reviewed it quite well, it's a 32-unit age-restricted, affordable restricted as well, project in Newmarket. There are density bonuses associated with what I just said in terms of what we could ask for from the planning board. We're not doing that. We're asking for the density that would be just permitted, so we're not asking for any of that extra density, and Christian will give you a better explanation than I will as to that. The project is really in flux in terms of how we move forward, and that's one of the reasons we're here. We originally came up with 3 concepts, and we looked at those pretty extensively. A lot of due diligence with respect to that. We've also worked with the town engineer with respect to some of those issues, and we look forward to presenting it to you tonight, and again, getting your feedback, and then we will be back for normal site plan review. We'll go through that process once we can. So I think what I would like to do now is just have Christian get up and kind of go through those approaches that we looked at. And again, if you have any questions of other design professionals that I've identified, feel free to engage them as well, and we look forward to doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, FX.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, member of the board. Again, Christian Smith with Beals Associates. And so, as FX discussed, obviously the first thing that Dave had done was have the wetlands delineated, DUSET go out and do a full boundary survey, topographic survey, and basically compile an existing conditions plan. So the project we looked at, the existing house, Dave felt that was worth rehabbing and keeping, so part of this proposal is going to be to carve that house onto its own conventional lot in the R2 zone. This property is served by water and sewer. And this was, I think, probably the third concept that we contemplated. We looked at a couple that would have had a building in the front and then a building in the wetland, in the upland island out back. This is another one that we did, same concept for the subdivision, but with a straight building very close to the front setback line. And once we went through this, there was another iteration as well where Dave contemplated a potential single-family home up in that area. But in working through that with Gove Environmental, this is actually a fairly important resource area, and I'll let Brendan Walden clarify if I make a mistake. But I believe that is a Tier 3 stream connected to a flood zone. So, again, the project came out to, just based on the upland, which was 4 acres, just over 4 acres. The density for that, when you multiply by 8 units an acre, is 32. That's what we're going for. There is an additional 0.95 acres of poorly drained soils, which the ordinance allows you to count for your density, which would have allowed him 39 units total. And again, that's all devoid of any request for the bonus structure that's built into this development ordinance. So Dave felt that the best idea would be to go with the 32, protect what is the important resource on the property, and move forward with one of these 2 plans. The third was just basically that same building, but further away from the road and the parking up front. I don't think that would be great for the light projection onto the road and onto abutting properties, etc. So in this scenario, we have absolutely zero wetland impacts, and we hope we're not going to have any conditional use permit issues either. That will all depend when we get to the actual vertical grading of the property. That may be a request that comes in with the full package. And I think with that, I would entertain, unless we want to go on to one of the other professionals. I guess I could also tell you that we do have Vanessa and Associates engaged, and they did provide us a draft form, traffic impact analysis. Everything looked great. The site distances are fine. No intersection along 152 that they looked at will have a change in level of service at any of the projection, full build-out projections. And they made some minor suggestions, which obviously we will incorporate into this when we move forward. One thing that DPW and engineering suggested was that we have a walkway that connects down with crosswalk. You know, it'll have the lights very similar to what you've got downtown, that connects into that sidewalk that kind of terminates at the entrance into the school. And I think that's the last piece of information that I want to discuss with you folks, and then we'll entertain your questions.
So does anybody have any questions for Christian? I know it's just very preliminary at this point. Christian, I would like to have Gove just go through the wetland delineation and,
Sure.
you said stream, and I know there's certainly a well-defined stream or ditch, whatever it is there.
Yeah.
Can you show us where that is on the,
Yeah.
talk to Gove about that, Christian?
Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
Before he gets, Christian, before he gets into that.
Yes.
How many acres is the total, what's the total acreage of the
The
site?
total parcel is 7.76.
9.76.
And when you said .95 acres poorly drained, is that 25? No, it wouldn't be. So it's .9 acres is poorly drained, and you were using the 25% percentage to be utilized?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, and obviously none of the very poorly drained soil is going to be used.
okay. And is that total acreage of 7.76 includes the house, or after?
That is after we carve the house out.
Thanks.
So I believe, Dave, this is the big culvert, correct? Is that the larger one that Rick just cleaned out? Or it's this one? Yes. Okay, so this is, yeah. So this is the culvert that the prior owner, evidently DPW had tried to get them to allow them to come onto the property and clean out the end of that, and for some reason they wanted nothing to do with them on property improving the swale. So Rick reached out to Dave once he figured out that he would be purchasing the property, and Dave allowed him to go in there. So we'll also provide an easement for their continued maintenance of that in the future. But basically, it's this culvert outlet, and if we can scroll down just a little, Bart.
So, up, I mean, you're up. Or to the next.
Up, I'm sorry, yeah. I just wanted to show them. So it comes in, the culvert comes in and chases this swale down through here until you get out into the FEMA flood line, which is just an A zone, so it does not have an elevation established by FEMA. But that's the location of.
So that ditch, that stream, if you will, was cleaned out by DPW recently?
Yeah, I believe it was done
Okay.
last fall, correct?
Okay, that makes sense, because there's not much vegetation there, okay.
Yeah, and I think that the abutters across the street are seeing a lot less ponding because of that effort by Rick and his guys.
Okay.
That's the trenching along the wood line there.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the wetlands are dissected? They're not contiguous, if you scroll back down?
Down here. Oh.
No, scroll back down, right there.
This is very like, are you looking at this location now?
Correct, yeah,
Yeah, I believe that's an old woods road.
okay.
It's not very wide, but I think that was probably just a historic fill that somebody put in to get a vehicle through there.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'd still like to have the Gove representative talk about
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
wetlands. Because this was, excuse me, while you're coming up, sir, go ahead, feel free. I guess the first question is, how long ago was this flagged? Was this just recently?
Yeah, Brennan Walden Go Environmental.
Okay.
It was flagged in October of last year.
Okay.
So, Christian, I just want to correct, it's a, I don't know what tier stream it is, but it is a intermittent, or it is a water course associated with a tier 3 floodplain, which is identified as a priority resource area by DES.
Which means what, excuse me, if you,
It's just a floodplain area, wetland floodplain that DES has identified on their website. Then it's their wetland permit planning tool. They identify it as a priority resource area by their definition.
so you avoid impact to that as best you can? Is that what that,
Yeah.
that basically what that means?
Yeah, they pretty much what it means is your property is now identified to have a priority resource area. They want to avoid impacts to that area as much as possible. So,
Thank you.
So any impact to wetlands on the site is, they try to either minimize it to the best, greatest extent practicable, or avoid it entirely.
Okay.
Is that specific to that particular wetland?
The wetland in the back, but because it's a water course associated with this, they would say, it's part of that whole system.
But just that particular system?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
So in the back, if you go to the top of the page, yeah. Kind of where that FEMA flood zone is, that's identified on the New Hampshire Wetland Permit Planning Tool as what they call a tier 3 floodplain associated, it's associated with a tier 3 floodplain, a water course associated with a tier 3 floodplain. Sorry, it's jumbled up there.
Yep.
Which they identify in their rules as a priority resource area.
Right. But, excuse me if I'm using the wrong word, thought I heard you talk about a water source to it,
Water
correct?
course.
Okay, course, okay.
Yeah,
So that too would be considered,
it is possible that is how they would see it in their eyes. It is, when you look at it on their mapping, it's dissociated from those wetlands, but that is really, that floodplain area is defined by usually the FEMA floodplains that they have on
so
record.
when we talk about an area, we need to consider that source as well, right? Of course, I should say.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, if you're impacting upstream, then they would want to know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any more questions? Okay, I guess at this point, might as well talk, oh, go ahead.
They want to go through what they submitted today? I think that would be important for
So
the
it'd be
public.
Well, I was gonna get to that. I wanted to go through,
Okay.
they submitted today the renderings?
Yeah, well, I just,
Yeah, yeah. Can we talk about, the landscape buffers too? I know it's a little early to spend a lot of time on it, but can we just get an idea of what you're proposing for landscape buffers?
So I'm Robbie Woodburn from Woodburn and Company. My office is across the street. We've been asked to conceptualize what the buffers might be like on this project. And in both cases, both building layouts, we've shown a planted buffer along the property line along the street. And that's in this case, it's about a 12 to 14 foot wide shrub buffer that has street trees in it. In our plant list, we've listed a number of street trees or trees that we think would be appropriate to the site. We haven't assigned them to any particular places though, but you can see the spacing of street trees along Main Street, South Main Street, and in that planted buffer. Now, that planted buffer has shrubs that grow between 2.5 to 5 feet, depending on what section of the buffer they're in. But basically, they're meant to, when they get to post installation, when they have a couple of years of growth on them, they'll be at that sort of 3 to 5 foot height and knock out the view of the cars. You can see kind of just from the dark green colors that there are drifts of evergreens through that. They're all salt tolerant. And so we think that they would be a good solution to screening the parking and then marrying the building to the ground, and especially the street trees. The street trees right now, we're calling out, suggesting that they should go in at 3-inch caliper, which is significant. Obviously, they won't be, the canopy size won't be what it's on the plan there, it'll be smaller than that, and we'll grow into that, probably grow bigger than what we're showing. Those are 35-foot circles. And then we've got planting around, at the base of the short end of the building, foundation planting to marry the building to the ground. We're also proposing to keep those 2 large deciduous trees between us and the subdivided property, and we've talked about construction techniques to put that new sidewalk in, but sensitively save those trees, because construction can wreak havoc on existing trees, and we're being sensitive to that. And that is it for the moment. Obviously, we're screening the dumpster, and we've got trees around the parking lot, but it's fairly straightforward planting plan. But the buffer is the important part in this case. And if you want to scroll to the other building, just so you can see the difference.
Let me pull it up, sorry. I thought I pulled the PDFs weren't combined.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah. That's not it, sorry. Get there in a second. My eyes can't see.
Yeah. So it's the same idea in that we're putting a buffer along the street. We're breaking it at the middle, so we're kind of celebrating that entrance to the building. But we've got street trees along the edges, and then buffer plantings that are closer to the parking lot, and a row of foundation plantings in front of the building.
Does anybody have any questions at this point? I know it's very preliminary, but it's good to get an idea of what they're proposing.
Well, my question would be more along the lines of transportation. So, to me, I look at this project and I say one of the attractions would be it's walkable to downtown. Can you talk about how your plan facilitates that? Because I don't see that here at all. When I look at this, I don't see how people walk.
So let me show you. So we've got an entrance to the building here, but we also have a rear exit entrance here, and a walkway along the face of the building. That walkway comes along the side of the building, and what I talked about with getting past those trees. And then we've got a crosswalk here that connects to that sidewalk right there.
Okay.
And is that what Christian had said, that's where you get, with proposal is to do the flashing lights like the high school has and like we have downtown for pedestrian? Okay.
Is that helpful?
What about if the town in the future wants to put a sidewalk going further along that part of town, going the opposite direction? Is that possible with this plan?
Yes, totally.
Or are the trees right up to the
No, they're not.
roadside?
No, there's a 7-foot edge between the curb line and the plant bed,
Okay.
and the trees are further back than that.
So are you thinking, Patrick, at that point, they would change the location of the sidewalk to the opposite side of the road? I mean, right now, it's on.
There
the
isn't a
school-
sidewalk at this point right there.
It is to the school, but then if you
Yeah,
cross
there's
over,
nothing
then
on
it
the
is.
other side,
Yeah.
so at some point, maybe there will be a sidewalk there. It would be nice to think that we could get there at some point on both sides, because people like to walk to downtown.
Yep.
Or if someone was walking across Grant Road, there's no sidewalk on either side when they first get there, so people walk on either side.
Do you foresee any issues with line of sight, meeting DOT line of sight with the landscaping plan?
Please do.
I'm not a DOT engineer, but Vanessa has looked at that, and it turns out, is it A?
The level of service?
Yeah. Yeah, the level of service is, in a draft form, is level A, so we did look at that, at the sightlines. So that would be part of our fuller application, obviously.
And for those that don't know, level A is the best.
Yeah,
F is the worst, A is the best. So
yeah,
I read the traffic memo before the meeting, and
yeah,
they're saying the traffic impact is not significant.
yep. So I know that we also submitted elevations. We have the architect here if you want to look at those and/or just talk about them.
I think we do. I think we want to talk about that because that's an important
Yeah.
component of this.
Great, we'll do that. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Mike Lassell from Lassell Architects. We started looking at this site here. It's a really unique site. It has this great wetland in the back, that really does connect to a lot of other wetlands. Wetlands are never sort of isolated. And, we eliminated that whole building section that was where the stream goes. We went away from that completely. And then we looked at that one section left over. The premise for these types of buildings is that they really house the local residents. The goal behind this, this affordable housing, senior housing, are those folks who live in town here that, may have been a shipyard worker, they're on a fixed income, they want to get out of their house, they want to stay in town. So that's the premise of this housing type. And the second premise of this housing type is that a lot of people live here, it's a 55 plus, but we've done a number of these, and there really are a couple of 55, but most of them are like 70 plus. That's kind of where they are, up right around there. So that's why the A for the connectivity for the road is so low, because the actual number of people driving here is much less than you would think. Typically, we have 1.7 units, parking spaces per building like this right here, because people just don't drive that much. And then we looked at the building itself, and we looked at how the building sat in the site, and there was discussion about having the building onto the street. We thought that there must be another solution also to limit the visual impact. And so we rotated the building. This is the linear building here. Can we go to the other one?
What is the height of that building?
35 feet at the peak,
The original.
right?
Is that from base of foundation or from grade level?
Well, slab, I would say. Right, so this is the other building right here. This is the proposed building. That's the one right on the road. And we thought, how do we decrease the visual impact of the building to the street? And so we decided to put it along the right side and bend it so that visually it didn't feel like a long linear building. And also from the street side, you saw something that was more in keeping with some of the small residential buildings. Obviously, it's not the same scale, but at least we began to talk about decreasing the visual impact and putting the rest of the building further back on the site. Even though we have some parking on the side of the building, with vegetation and, with obviously, dark sky lighting, the goal is to really decrease the impact. By putting it in a site like this right here, using the gables and also using the shed roofs, we pick up a lot of the forms that you see in town here right now anyway. And so the overall impact of the building, with the entranceway, with the little shed roofs and everything else, begins to decrease the scale. And then once the planting can grow in, everything else, it'll feel as though it's always been there. So the goal really is to reflect a lot of the architectural sensitivity of the area. We've used shingles up above to decrease the height. And, we have multiple entries so that people can go outside, enter the building. And the main sort of public space of the building is on this side right here. Right here, this is where everybody comes. This is where they would have the community space. They come outside here. It's the south side. It's the southeast side, so they get plenty of sun all day long. This is the sunny side right here, which is nice to have. And so, the goal really was to, put people on the street side where they can sit outside in the sunny side, have it connect to the downtown, essentially create a place people can live.
Thank you. Would this building be required to be sprinklered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it'll be a fire-rated building, have an elevator, have fire stairs, it'll be fully alarmed, everything.
And based on this and the plans, am I reading this right? It's basically almost 7,600 square feet footprint?
Correct.
Right, okay. Okay. Hold on 1 minute, man. We'll give you an opportunity. Yep.
And with this orientation of the building, it's still incorporated the sidewalk access that we
Correct.
talked about before?
Correct. Correct.
What is the size of the apartment?
A little over 500 square feet. So they're all one bedroom.
550, they're all
And
one
they're all
bedroom.
the same?
and they're all one bedroom.
Does anybody have any more questions? I have, well, go ahead.
In comparable types of developments like this for using the 55 and older, being the affordable elderly housing ordinances, do you typically find that you need one space per unit, parking space per unit?
No. No, we've done probably a dozen, 2 dozen, and we've done over and over again. And we've been, we've monitored how many people park, how many cars stay there for a month before being moved, and, it's sort of, it winds up being, between 0.7 and 0.9 cars per unit. When there's, family housing, sometimes it's a little bit more, but typically for this age group, it's about 0.7, 0.8. Usually 1 per unit is adequate. We
Thank
did
you.
an extensive analysis for New Hampshire Housing and Finance Authority, NIFA, and we did that for a number of projects, and that's kind of what we came up with. We had them review all the projects in New Hampshire and come up with that basic number.
Thank you. Anybody else have any more questions for this gentleman? I think at this point, I'm sorry,
I
Mr.
apologize. So yeah, you've got ballpark 32 parking spaces, is that right? Correct. How many of them would be classified as handicap? And how do you work around, God forbid, a medical vehicle that needed to come into that facility? Where do they go? I mean, is that all mapped out?
It will be. It certainly will be in the final iteration, and we'll work through that with Vanessa. We have, I doubt that they would pull a ladder truck into that property. That would probably park on the street and they would tie into an existing hydrant to fight fires. Ambulances, absolutely, pumper trucks, things of that nature. Without question, the access will be, available for them. And that we'll work through with Vanessa as they finalize their traffic evaluation as well, their traffic impact study as well.
And then just regarding the handicap spots?
2.
2 for senior housing for 32 units?
Correct. 2 are required up to 50 spaces. That's
That's in our
standard
ordinance.
ADA law.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
For the land that's not developed, is there a plan to have any sort of formal conservation plan for that land that's not going to be utilized?
Good evening, David Lemieux, DR Lemieux Builders. My plan was to deed restrict the rest of the property for non-development that would follow with the land.
Okay. And then would it be up to the HOA, I guess, that would then be in charge of that land eventually? Is that how that would work?
It would essentially just remain as it is.
Okay.
Yep. It would be
So would that be
deed restricted.
Deed restricted.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a rental property, just to be clear,
Oh, it's
correct?
a rental property.
That's
Okay,
correct.
That's right. So it's not an HOA. Right.
Thank you. I think what I'd like to do at this point is ask Attorney Bruton, I think you're the right person to speak to this. Our ordinance is elderly housing, affordable elderly housing. Can you speak to actually what that means? And it says, it's relative to the federal requirements and anything. Can you speak to that a little bit for people at home and in the audience to know exactly what that
Yeah, there's
means?
2 components to that. One is elderly, 55 and older. And generally, under the Fair Housing Act, you're not allowed to discriminate against families. So they developed an exception where they said, well, you could restrict your housing to 55 and older. And if you did that, there would have to be at least within 80% of the units, at least one person who's 55 and older. So in most projects, you see a proposed maybe 1 or 2 bedroom facility. And sometimes in that 20%, you could have someone that might not fit that category as 55 and older. What we've done in this project is limit it to the 1 bedroom. So what you're getting in essence from that is someone who is not basically with a family, and again, that's usually, you're not allowed to say that out loud, if you will. But under that Fair Housing Act, they do allow for that, and that's our goal. The second aspect of this is the affordable side, which is different than the elderly. And again, I think, and I've been through pretty much every community in the state in front of every land use board, and everyone is interested in that word, affordable, and for good reason. So in this case, when we say affordable, we look at income limitations, which I can't give you the specifics exactly on that, but when you go through a finance project and you call it affordable, you're going through the New Hampshire Finance Authority, NIFA, and they would have very specific requirements with respect to income eligibility and things of that nature. So you are usually looking for either an elderly housing project that would suit your needs in the town for people to sell their house and stay in town, which is nice. And then separately, usually you would look to see an affordable housing project and you'd say, okay, that's nice. And in this case, what we're doing is we're bringing both of those together. So it's very unique and somewhat restrictive in terms of how I just described it. So I think that this really presents a great opportunity for the town to provide not only elderly housing, but affordable elderly housing, because not all elderly housing is affordable, not all affordable housing is elderly. This closes that gap so that it's really well defined for that. So I'm hopeful that's helpful in terms of that question.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Attorney Bruton?
So do we know, is this the first of that type in this town, of combining those two elements, affordable and elderly?
I don't know.
No, the other, the one up on Wadley Falls
For
past
Ralph.
this development
Okay.
is
That would
affordable
be-
elderly. So, how do you legally, implement a policy that town residents would have priority?
I don't think we're saying that they would have priority. I think we're providing an opportunity for them to come to this
Just expanding the
facility.
inventory.
It's a facility where they are located, and vis-a-vis, if you're talking to me and I'm looking for that housing and I would qualify, would I move from where I live in the state to here? And usually we do see a good migration, but there's never a specific restriction or limit on that in terms of that being Newmarket residents only, if you will. And I think that would be limiting and would be tough to police, obviously. So we're not saying that, and so it's good that we can clarify that. But I think what we want to do is provide that opportunity, and you usually don't see that much difference in terms of who's going to eventually show up. But it's at least the opportunity.
Does anybody have any more questions for?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, everyone. Now I will open it up to the public. I just ask you to come up, state your name and address and where you are relative to the project. And like I said, if you could try to keep your comments to 5 minutes, that would be appreciated.
Hi, good evening. My name is Derek Conrad. I'm on a budding neighbor at 245 Main Street. And I've lived in the town since 2019 of November, and I live right in front of the elementary school. Since living there, my wife works from home. I'm home quite a bit in the off-season. I own a landscape company, a design installation landscape company. And my concerns are a few. The safety being number one. I heard some proposals here tonight in terms of like the sidewalk being put, a sidewalk being created, or a walkway being created for the structure that's being proposed, and tying into that, tying into a crosswalk that's going to attach to the sidewalk that's already existing. So we're thinking about the tenants that are going to be living there doing that. We're not giving any thought or consideration enough, I think, to how it's going to invite children to cross over that way as well. It's not just going to be limited to the folks and the tenants. And we're talking about an elderly situation for folks living there. I think I heard the average age it's going to be allowed for 55 plus, but I think I heard 70 plus. I just don't see a lot of that happening from tenants living over their crossing, inviting more safety concerns for the children doing it, the pedestrians that do walk through the school and around that area. So I have a huge concern about that happening. The second part of the safety is the traffic control survey that was done. I'm a little surprised to hear that it's in parameters to whatever's being allowed. Given that we've had 2 major accidents at that intersection in the last 30 days. One involving a school bus. No children were on the school bus, but nonetheless, it was in the same exact area. So that's a huge cause for concern for us as abutting neighbors, for myself, for my family, and for the children that go to school there. That's a huge concern for me. Second part, and I'll be quick and move on here, but the second part is design, the aesthetics, what it's going to look like, what it's going to bring to property values, things like that. And what I think about is a landscape, person in the landscape industry, and I heard some talk on the renditions for landscaping. It needs to have some more thought and purpose involving what's going to happen post-installation. Who's going to take care of it? Is there a watering irrigation system? What kind of trees, shrubs, and plants are going to be put in place that are going to be sun and drought tolerant, deer resistant? We have a lot of deer and a lot of animals in that area. So those are all things that we have to think about. And I heard or saw some of the proposals for the sizes of the vegetation going in there, and I disagree with that. I think there's nurseries and vendors that carry mature trees, and we need to make a budget for that and consider that, because mature trees can be put into those areas. We don't have to buy 1 gallon, 3 gallon little baby plants and say, hey, in 2 to 3 to 5 years they're going to grow. They're going to grow if they're taken care of. They're going to grow if they have a watering system. They're going to grow if they have services that provide insects and disease protection. So though I didn't hear any of that talked about today with regards to the landscape plan. So that
Yeah, it's premature for us to talk about that
Sure.
level of detail, but
Sure,
I understand
well,
your
for
concerns.
consideration.
Absolutely, I understand your concerns,
Consideration.
valid concerns.
So those the biggest thing for our community is number one being the safety of the points I discussed here today, and I think it's a huge mistake to put a sidewalk in that allows other particularly kids walking across there, and that's asking for more trouble. So thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening. I'm Liz Doust. I live at 255 Wildly Falls Road. I've lived here for, it'll be 25 years in September. I live Newmarket. I love it very much, and I have enjoyed being here, and my kids were raised in this town, and I know a lot of you from different organizations, and I'm glad to see you here tonight. I do have some concerns about what is being proposed to our neighborhood. We definitely live in a neighborhood, and we may not have a cul-de-sac, but we're still a neighborhood where we live. I'm worried because I don't feel like this is in keeping with our neighborhood, this design. I think it's far too tall, for one thing. Most of the houses around there are not that tall at all, and they're certainly not in this scope or size. This is much, much bigger in the bulk, in the design, and the scope of what they're proposing. Additionally, our area of town, it's rural. This is not a typical rural building. This is a building, and I do want to say that I'm very much in support of elderly housing that's affordable. My father-in-law lived up the street, and we were very appreciative that there was a place that he could afford that was clean and safe and friendly and part of our town. And if you'd ever looked at those units, you'll see they are a 2-story facility, and I think they're more in keeping with our town, and they're set quite far back off the road so that it doesn't affect really the abutters as much, I think, and it doesn't really, it isn't so pronounced as you drive through. Route 152 is a scenic byway. It's one that brings a lot of people through town, and a lot of people to drive through our roads. And it just, I think, I wish I could be more articulate than this, but I'll just say this just doesn't feel like it's in keeping with our neighborhood. And the scope and design is really large, and it seems a shame to me that we couldn't have something that fits more in with our town. We've always done a really good job in expansion and keeping our town the small town feel that it is. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next, anybody else?
Hi, my name's Steve Sarasi. I am the current owner of 240 South Main Street. Puts me directly across the school, from the school on the next lot over from the newly subdivided lot that we're proposing here. In regards to what Derek had said earlier, there's actually been 3 major accidents in this stretch in the last 6 to 8 months. There was a 2-vehicle accident right in front of the entrance to the school at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Gentleman stopped to pull into the school. Another car coming at about 35 miles an hour rear-ended him. Never even slowed down, never touched the brakes, hit him pretty good. We had the school bus involved accident, which obviously whenever you have a school bus involved accident, it's serious. Fortunately, there was no students involved, but what could have been. And then we had a late night accident, which a gentleman hit a telephone pole, took out a hydrant, rolled himself over a couple of times. So all of that's happened in this one little stretch, all in the last 8 months. The sight lines at this location are pretty interesting. I know we've talked about the fact that we're conveniently staying on the town side of this property as opposed to the state side of this property, because the state road, it begins at Grant Road, which would mean 400-foot sight line versus the 200-foot sight line that the town requires. The speeds, obviously, in this area are significant. Hence, our local police department has installed a sign to help deter the speeding traffic. Fortunately, I spoke with an Officer O'Brien in the last 24 hours in regards to what statistics that sign keeps, and they're actually pretty significant. So at a follow-up meeting, I should have that information as far as what the volume of traffic is, at least heading towards town. That's what they're currently counting, and how many of those vehicles are in excess of the speed limit on that road in that stretch. Beyond that, obviously we've talked about design aesthetics. You're talking about a neighborhood that the average house is over 100 years old. The average house is a single-story cape, maybe with some additions or some dormers in the upstairs, but there's nothing to the extent of a 35-foot building in this neighborhood. There's also nothing to the extent of something in excess of 75 to 100 feet long of frontage, of just straight line frontage. So I'll leave that. That's been discussed a bit. The buffers that we're talking about building, we're building a buffer along the front side of the building, which is great. I mean, it's the quiet side of the building, and there's nothing being done along the back side. As my property will be affected by the fact that there's parking out back, and there's no plans for a buffer between the parking area and the abutters on that side. Drainage, obviously we've talked a little bit about the drainage at the end. My understanding as well, the previous owner did not allow the town to install storm drains along that side of the road because they would have required them to tie into the existing system that was down at the end that's been discussed. She wouldn't let that happen. So I would hope that as part of this, we're talking about doing that. I have a significant water problem in my basement. I can see where over the years, Route 152, we actually had to dig a water line out front last summer, and Route 152 is about 3.5 feet higher than it was back when the first time they even put pavement on it, which is significant. So what's happening is that water's coming down the driveway from the school and just berating my property and the abutting properties along that side of the road. And without the ability to get out through that side, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the water if it's not taken care of. Obviously, we're putting a big dam, a big dam, a big non-pervious parking lot out back. Obviously, we have the parking spaces. It was my final thing. I'm amazed that we're talking about a 32-unit building of elderly folks, and we're talking about 32 parking spaces. I'd love to see where that's referenced. We're not talking about any additional parking for guests, for visitors. We're not talking about any additional parking for handicap parking with 2 spaces. And I know we're meeting the minimum requirements, but this seems like a location where we should be maybe doing a little bit better than the minimum. But my guess is that's because of the calculations of the lot size at this point. So that's what I have initially. And hopefully we can talk about them as we go along through this process. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Linda Dozier, 249 South Main Street. Again, the traffic safety on that road, they said there's no problem if you live there. For any of us who try to get in and out of our yards, it really is a problem. The accidents occur because either end of the stretch there's curves and you cannot see the cars as they're coming up around there. And that's what happened with the bus accident. The cars coming up around the corner and pulling into Grant Road. Also, looking at some of the plans that we were able to see, the driveway to this project is right across from my driveway, and having to deal with trying to get out and into my driveway and having to deal with the traffic coming from this project is a problem for me. And having the building right out front near the road, I know myself and several others have reached out to Bart saying that we were not in favor of this, and also I wrote to Mr. Lemire that the other design he had, putting it out back, was better, because the parking is also going to be right in front. If you put the building in the front of the street, there's still going to have parking out in front on the street, so that's not hiding any of it. And also, it does not go with the neighborhood with all the houses that are there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Christy Hegarty, and I just moved into 259 Wadley Falls Road just about a year ago. I'm not an actual abutter, but I'm close enough. I want to speak to pretty much everything my neighbors mentioned about the safety issue on 152 coming into town. I'm actually in the process of moving my driveway, hopefully, to help alleviate some of the stress I have backing out of my driveway. That's for another day. One of the questions I had, aside from everything that's been mentioned so far, is this a smoking facility or a smoke-free rental space? Meaning, will the residents be coming outside to smoke cigarettes at that front door that's on the street side?
If you're going to speak, please. It's a good time for you to answer that, but if you come up to the microphone, please, that's all.
Again, David Lemieux, that is not decided by us. That's a New Hampshire housing regulation. I believe the folks can smoke outside. I know they can't smoke in the building, but I believe they could come outside.
Okay, so they will not be able to smoke in the building?
That's correct.
Okay, so what I am asking as a resident who lives on that street is, will you provide a space? Because I moved from Durham not too long ago, where I was in another area where they had a building for tenants similar to this, and I know that they just rehabbed their whole place because what was happening is all the residents were coming out and kind of hanging out on the corner of Madbury Road. And, they ended up, after years, finally, designating a space, I think, for the residents to then be able to safely go and smoke if they wanted to in a safe space. Again, that comes to mind when I think about kids coming out of school, elementary kids, just kind of the quality of life that we're promoting in our Newmarket, but that's something that we probably aren't thinking about. I know it seems silly, but I've lived it and I've seen it, and I know it becomes an issue. So that would be, aside from in a letter I wrote to the town, again, kind of reiterating, I have a 15-year-old who's freshman at the high school. She walks dangerously because there's no sidewalk across Grant Road and down that part of the road that does not have a sidewalk up to the elementary. So there is no sidewalk across from this building. That is the tenants that live, that spoke to you. So there is a stretch there's no sidewalk there. And that's a main concern for my family as my child walks to the high school every day. And I am very concerned, again, about the driveway, the traffic, and the consideration for the many, many children who try to traverse that area in the morning and in the evening coming back from school. And then, I just think, again, the plans for, specifying areas where people can hang out outside that aren't right on the road. If that entrance is right on the road, then that's going to draw all of those folks to sit in the sun, which I totally get, to smoke their cigarettes in the afternoon. So I just would like to have that be thought out better.
That makes sense. That's an interesting, that's something I never would have thought of. Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak?
How you doing? Tim Noyce, 38 Maple Crest. This is the first time I've been able to look at this because I was craning my neck over there. So my backyard, it's all cat and nine tails of this wetlands that they're building into. I don't know if I can see it from here.
Up here.
Right on the corner.
Yeah,
first lot.
82.
Yeah, that one right there.
So there's a creek, there's a man-made wall dividing this wetland, and then there's a creek where all of our stuff drains into and makes its way around Riverbend. I don't know if that was put in when they developed Riverbend. It divides wetlands. So my concern is if they're gonna dig hundreds of thousands of square feet and put a box in it and build into the wetlands, and I don't know I can't see how much are they gonna be filling in wetlands?
Tim, at this point, this plan has not infringing on the wetlands at all, not filling any of the wetlands.
Okay, I'm new to this.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's what we're here for.
It just, that's, really, it's drainage, because everyone in Maple Crest, everything comes down into that creek and comes out there, and, I don't know, this project it stinks, so, that's all I got, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody else would like to speak?
Dawn Mesa, 34 Maple Crest. I've lived in my house my whole life, 64 years, and I can know for a fact that my house would not be able to be built today because of the wetlands. And I'm constantly, my sump pump goes off every 15 minutes, year round. What's going to happen with the sewer? Because that's already a problem with Maple Crest, that they're coming to have to clean out the sewer system. So I don't, you're not going to be doing the wetlands, but pushing that water is just, my backyard is already saturated. And I butt right up to Zone A, right up to there. And it's always wet. We have the ditch, which used to get cleaned out, and it doesn't now, so that it could flow down, but it's all just backed up. If you put something there, where's the water gonna go? It's just gonna be pushed to butters from Maple Crest. And I don't understand that. How you can even get to this far. And only because I'm ignorant to what you do, but how did it get proposed before all this got thought out? Is that the process?
Yeah, let me answer that for you. So this is a preliminary hearing. So the developer and owner is here to get feedback
Okay.
from us as to concerns, issues, things like that. That's why they're here, to get this kind of feedback. So if they decide to go forward, they understand what the issues are going to be in front of them.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
And then pretty much I'm in agreement with all the people that have spoken, so if I could just put that down as the record.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Fred Wallace, 237 South Main Street. Been in town in my same house for probably 28 years. My concerns, because I happen to work for DOT, is coming out of Grant Road, taking a right, coming out of that development, taking a left, and oncoming traffic coming. From my house all the way around past Grant Road is a curve. And my house has been hit twice, for the record. So, they don't do 35 through there. A.
Yep.
B, I think maybe if the project was a two-story, you know, it wouldn't be just like the next place they just put down the road. There's 2 duplexes in there. 2-story, it's not too alarming to anybody that lives in the immediate neighborhood. Now we're talking about a building 3 stories, 32 units. It's just too big for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Gene Connolly. I live at 1 Grant Road, which, you know, I don't know, maybe there's a couple feet of abutting there. I'm not 100% sure. Mostly, I just want to be on the record to show my concern for issues that have been mentioned, the traffic issues and the look and feel of aesthetic. Speaking of the curve, that's something that I experience all the time. People are just whipping around the road. I'm in my house listening to it all night long. Adding more complexity to that seems very dangerous to me. I walked downtown from my house the other day to vote here in the storm, which is sort of like pressing conditions, but that's when, you know, the vote was. So, and I came back, you know, and it was a very pleasant walk despite, you know, all the snow. But right when I get to that school entrance and beyond, it gets scary. And, you know, so I do other things. I go through the school, right? And that's great. But for anyone in this facility, it would be scary. So dealing with that pedestrian extension is important. Yeah. And, you know, in my walks up and back in the last month or so, as I've been thinking about this, you know, I don't see any houses on my walk that look and feel like what we're talking about today. I guess I don't walk in the other direction. I walk to town from my house, you know, so I don't, maybe I'm not seeing as much going in the other way, but it just doesn't feel like what I see. And, you know, if I were to be honest with myself, I'd say that I'm here tonight mostly just to join my neighbors in mourning, looking out on that open space, you know, and seeing everyone here, you know. So, yeah, that's all I'll say.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'm Lauren McGinley. I live at 32 Maple Crest, so I believe we're lot 85, right at the back of the cul-de-sac. So I understand that this is not encroaching upon wetlands. I still want a little bit of assistance as we move on in this process, understanding some of that classification of a primary flood or source way. I can't understand that too much because I know if I walk past my property line about 20 feet, I'm staring at a significant section of the river that comes up and touches into all of the wetlands that are connected behind this property. I am incredibly concerned, I think, first and foremost for my own property and flooding. We have taken about 10 years to restructure our acre of property so that the wetlands don't contribute to additional flooding and hopefully to ease some of the flooding that happens within our property. Luckily, we are on a slight slope going towards the wetlands. I think that this is going to significantly change the way the water table reacts in that section of the neighborhood. I know that a lot of my neighbors and a lot of the new residents on Maple Crest have taken some significant steps to reduce the flooding. My sump pump, as Dawn said, goes off about every half hour as well currently, and that's with some significant work already done. Additionally, I have concerns about the flow of wildlife, and I'm not sure if this is going to be further on in the process that we'll start to examine an environmental impact. Every night I could line up in front of my picture window and watch some deer walk down our street, literally walk the circle. 3 fox were yesterday night. We cohabitate very nicely with the wildlife currently. I think a lot of our neighbors are very respectful of the wildlife that exists, but it's a lot, it's significant. This is going to change, I think, the pattern and the flow of the way the wildlife are coming into neighborhoods. And my concern is not just with the back of the property and where it would affect my property, but the way that wildlife are going to interact with this significant increase in traffic. I'm sure many of us, as we walk our kids to school, have seen the deer in the early morning eating the apples on the apple trees right on the main street. So I think it is going to impact that a lot. I have some safety concerns as well. We talked about a crosswalk and that there would be a crosswalk light system put in. I have concerns with our town moving forward with additional crosswalk lights without addressing other crosswalks in the town. So the one about 100 feet up the road from this does not have a crosswalk light. So what happens is when you alternate between having a crosswalk light, not having a crosswalk light, drivers become dependent on either seeing a crosswalk light or not seeing a crosswalk light. So I would want that addressed further on in the process, that we need to have a cohesive crosswalk system within our town to provide safety at every access point for the crosswalk. Additionally, I think my other concerns align with the people that have spoken. Especially, I would like it to better match the aesthetic of our town, and especially that area of town. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Agatha Halliday. We live at 247 South Main Street. I just want to be on record for showing appreciation for my neighbors who spoke so eloquently about our concerns. And just reiterate that for us, whose picture window looks out onto that gorgeous field, who have watched deer be raised and play out there, which is not a big point in the process, but I would just like to ask the question. I know that scale is allowed there, but does it have to be? I'm not against development or elderly housing or, affordable housing, but just because we can doesn't mean we should. So can we question the scale of things to make it still a Newmarket neighborhood? And the visual impact, while some say that trees will grow over time, like I'm not going to live long enough to see them actually cover that building. So the visual impact is great. The feel of it is enormous. So I would just hope that there can be a discussion about the scale and magnitude of what's being presented. And just because we can doesn't mean we should. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Fred Wallace, 237 South Main Street. I know when they put the school driveway basically in my backyard, wasn't my property, but right there. I'm curious, I don't know how to word this. Lost my train of thought, sorry guys.
Oh, that's all right.
If you have a follow-up, you can email me.
Yeah,
Contact me.
sure.
Yeah, you can pass it along.
Boy, that's crazy.
You're way too young to be doing that.
Just
One last thing, Steve Sarasi, once again, 240 South Main Street. We've seen these plans before. Mr. Lemieux had called some of the neighbors or written to some of the neighbors and asked us to come to his office, presented us with the 3 current proposals that you guys have seen tonight. One question that I have, we have an existing facility in town that this is a very close facsimile to, about half mile up the street. And what I can tell you is that I can't see that facility from the street during the summertime. And during the wintertime, I can see the top of a little bit of one building. That's all I can see from the street because they incorporated it into an existing area where it could be hitting. We're talking about right now building this in the middle of an open field. So like we said, the buffer is not going to happen for the next, any one of our lifetimes here, maybe my kid's lifetime. So I know I've been told that we can't look at any additional places on the property, but I did hear the wetlands specialist that spoke to us tonight, who made mention of the fact that, well, although it might be class 3 in the back, he's suspecting that possibly it might be class 3 that would need to be crossed over to get to the back, but he's not sure of that. And it already has been breached in one location, so it's not like there's no historical preference for crossing over in this area. So I know we're all on to these 3 existing proposals, but we might want to revisit the fact that there still is plenty of property here to build something much more to scale, break it down into a couple of buildings and build it in the back and hide it and deal with the, less of an aesthetic issue that we're dealing with right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi again, Derek from 245 South Main. All I wanted to do is just make a comment. I wasn't coming here tonight expecting to have this show out of this community. I'm fairly new to Newmarket, and I think it's just strengthened our neighborhood. We have people here that aren't even abutters that really care, see the dangerous impacts of what's going on, and we're taking this seriously. We just want to be heard. We want everyone to understand, like, we live there. We have to live there. However this goes, however this gets approved, we're not against it. We just want to be heard. We want it to fit into the community, and we all want to just, make the neighborhood, keep the neighborhood the way it is. We're not against the expansions and things of that nature, but we want it to. There'll be a lot of unhappy people in that neighborhood if some of these voices aren't heard today and considerations taken in. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, so, for everybody out there, this is the first step in what may be a long process. This is so Mr. Lemieux can get feedback on whether he wants to go forward with this project or not. It's very, very early on. We have a set of criteria that this project would need to meet for us to approve it. It's in our regulations. So if they do decide to come forward with a proposal, we will be going through those item by item to see that they meet those requirements. That's the process we have. There'll all be public hearings if they do go forward. And as necessary, we will have other professionals come in. I know traffic is an issue. At some point, if they move forward, we'll probably have, is it Vanasson Associates who did the traffic? Vanasson Associates come in and answer questions about the traffic. We'll have questions about the traffic. I'm sure other departments in the town will have concerns about the traffic or questions about the traffic. And a project like this, more than likely, we'll have a TRC developed whereby 2 or 3 members from this board will sit in and meet with the engineers and owners' representatives and whatnot, and department heads, and get the feedback from the department heads in town, find out what they have to say. So, DPW, fire, all those, water, sewer, police. So that will be the process as we go forward. So I thank you all for your input. It's all valuable. We will. You raised some valid questions here that will be addressed if they move forward, and we will, if they move forward, everything will be a public meeting, so you're more than welcome to come back and speak at each particular thing. It's a large enough project that it will take some time to get through the process. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to come in and speak and let your feelings be known. Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank all of you.
Yes? Yes. Yeah, thank you for coming out. If you don't come out, we don't know. With that, I think I will close the public hearing.
Did the applicant have any questions relative to the special use permit?
No, I don't think we do. I do think we appreciate the process too, and I wanted the board to understand that, and then also the abutters, and I know they take that with a grain of salt, but we are here to understand those questions. We'll try to answer as many as we can, but we do look forward to going through every single one of those steps that we are familiar with, and that, you know, we know you will look at seriously, and we expect you to look at our data you know, strongly and with questions, and we hope that we can answer those as well. But we do appreciate this process, and I wanted the board to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else? Okay, we're all set with that. If you guys all want to head out, you're more than welcome to. While everybody's leaving, new, old business, we're not gonna do.
I can give an update.
Yes, yeah, go ahead, you can do that one.
Be hard to hear in the video.
Oh.
How are ya? Good to see you.
How are ya?
Nice to meet you. I'm Christian Smith.
Yeah, I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Christian? Christian?
Christian.
Yes.
Sorry. You think I know that? Doing this for 20 years. Have a good night, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think he's got plans in there, just so you know.
Thank you.
All righty. Bart, you want to just go
Yeah.
through the,
Yeah, so, the
update.
update and the historical, still working on it. A lot of things have been happening lately, so, I'm trudging through. So I anticipate having a product, for the May meeting for review.
oh, awesome, thank you.
It has not been forgotten.
All right.
So, just for clarification, what, are you thinking, are you taking an approach of updating the actual ordinance?
No, just, I'm just looking
The
at.
overlay district,
Well,
actually?
I'm looking at, site plan review,
Okay.
and seeing where we can make amendments there, because that'd be the easiest path forward.
But they would only apply to the buildings, if it's in the ordinance, unless someone's coming for a development.
Right, so, you know, where can we get both? So, when there's only a building permit and then site plan review, so it may require ordinance change too, so I'm just doing a little more fine-tuning.
Yep, thank you. I've got a couple of quick things to talk about. First, I want to ask the board's opinion. Lately, as I've been getting into the agendas, like tonight, for instance, our agenda package was 329 pages long. You know, a lot of that usually is a drainage report. I don't think that anybody, it's a lot of technical detail that I'm an engineer and I don't read them because it takes too much time. I think nobody's reading them, so things like that, are we okay with only getting the information we really need in these packages as opposed to everything that's submitted? Because I know, I've been doing this for a long time, I've never once read a drainage report.
I think what's important is just having whoever is responsible for the town for reviewing that report provide a one-page memo or whatever as to bringing to the board's attention issues that we need to, deal with because of our regulation, where what they're proposing just doesn't meet it.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying that they don't need to submit them.
No,
I think
no,
they
but
just-
I
we
have
just don't
no-
need to see them.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think.
have no
we do.
idea what it's saying,
Right.
you're relying on the.
It's a
the
HydroCAD
people
program with a
those,
lot of numbers on it that
Expertise.
spits out something and everybody goes, oh, that's good or bad. So, I'm throwing that out. What's everybody's position? Do we give Bart kind of the authority to provide us what is important on these things as opposed to every piece of paper that comes in?
So,
No.
yes,
To us.
provided,
To us, or to the.
submitted,
It's referred to be submitted.
Submitted.
And available to the public?
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Online.
So, the way I would envision this happening is everything will be uploaded, but in your physical packets, don't have to, yeah. So basically, I'd be putting, everything be publicly information, so, say on the online, platform, I'd upload the PDFs to it, so everyone has access to it.
Is there a way, and I know these, you have this new program happening, but can you have the drop-down menus on the program so that here's the application and then here's the site plan, here's, here's the reports?
Okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. What I've been doing before is just consolidating, but if you want it, parsed out, I can definitely do that.
Yeah.
I think that would be better,
Because
obviously.
I was like,
Yeah.
this, I
You're
opened
going
up- I
through
opened up the
pages and
agenda
pages
today,
and
it's like
pages just to
300
see
something
what's
pages,
on
and
the
I'm like,
agenda.
It's
No,
the
no.
last thing on the agenda, it isn't on the 330.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
right, exactly.
It takes a long
I can definitely do that. I just thought it would be, so I thought the opposite, convenience is opening one PDF and you scroll through, so,
No, because you gotta scroll through
Yeah.
29 pages to make sure, because you're trying to get to the next agenda item and you don't know where to start.
no, I can definitely, that can,
Right.
definitely,
Okay.
I can do that approach.
Town council, we get executive summaries.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is the situation, this is what we think, and then the
This.
supporting material is there.
This is great. I
Yeah.
like this
Yes.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this plus the drawings is what we really need to see. It's got
Right.
the recommendations,
Hmm.
everything that we need in 2 pages, I think is.
I agree.
Deal.
I told Bart that earlier, that that was a great step forward with that
Yep.
spreadsheet.
That's something new,
Huge.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
Remember that from
Yep,
before.
nope, Bart just started it.
Yeah, I thought it'd be, easier to just go through things. And, yeah, like I said, relevant information.
Yeah.
All right, so, we'll proceed down that path. The other thing I want to talk about is,
Just before you
Okay.
leave that, there's also, I don't know who's doing all the copying of the applications, is the applicant providing all those copies?
Applicant provides it.
Okay, so Sue's
typically.
just taking them and putting them in our boxes,
Yes,
the abutters list, the application
Correct.
itself?
yep.
Okay,
Sometimes we make extra copies, but,
yeah.
for the bulk, it's,
Okay.
They provide
yeah,
it.
it's
All right.
provided. But again,
Again, I think that can be streamlined, because what we really want are the plans or waivers.
Yep.
Right?
yeah, so.
Things
I-
that we need to act upon. We're not checking a butters list, that would be you.
So maybe it's more they submit one application and then butters list, yada, 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 and then we can put the PDF online, and if you want to read the narrative, everything
Yeah.
else, you go to that. Physical plans will be provided.
And the applicant
Hard copy.
still
Correct.
provides the 11 by 17 physical plans.
and we can print out the application if we so choose.
Yeah.
We don't need to, but
Right.
with that spreadsheet,
Yeah.
we really don't need it to even see the application.
And if we want to open it and read it, we can.
Absolutely,
It's online.
absolutely,
Right.
Yep.
absolutely. All right, that's good. That'll save some trees
Yes,
Yeah.
and some time.
yes, absolutely.
The other thing is, I'm not sure any of you are aware of, that the governor has, I don't know whether he set up a committee or whatever, but the governor is proposing streamlining licensing in the state.
Well, there's actually a bill.
Yes, yes,
So you have to,
yes,
And
Yeah.
yes,
yeah,
yes.
And no, 655 and House Bill 2.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, they're very different.
So, to make it, there's a lot of stuff involved in that, but the things that impact us are, they're proposing to eliminate a license for wetland scientists, for soil scientists, and for landscape architects. Part of it, they're gonna eliminate a bunch of other licenses and other practices. In theory, they're gonna make it easier for out-of-state people to come into state and work. But us and probably every city or town in the state has regulations that require work be done by licensed professionals. New Hampshire licensed soil scientists, wetland scientists. And why I think it's important is that, for instance, Massachusetts doesn't have a requirement for, they have no such thing as a wetland scientist license. So anybody that thinks they can flag wetlands can go out and flag wetlands, which is not an ideal situation to be in. So I do know a couple of towns that we work in southern New Hampshire. The planning board has given the planner authority to write a letter to the state objecting to certain components of that. So I just want to throw that out there and get everybody's input. I would feel much more comfortable if they kept wetland scientists and soil scientists as a license requirement. I suspect that this whole thing is a result of somebody thinking it's too cumbersome and we can save people money if we don't require these things. I know personally that if somebody comes in here and they're not a licensed wetland scientist with a plan delineating wetlands, I'm going to suggest let's hire somebody to review that to make sure that we know it was done appropriately. So I don't see it as a time or money savings thing for people, so I would prefer that the state not change that.
But I think it also brings up the risk of if the state passes that law, do you have a right as a town to require somebody to stamp plans?
No, you won't, because in
Because
a
then
certain amount
that
of,
would be against the state law.
right, in a certain amount of time, they won't be in existence. Right, right, right.
My understanding is the latest bills, and I have listened in on a couple of the House meetings, and I've attended a couple of professional meetings as they're talking about merging the land survey board with the engineering.
Oh,
board,
right.
And also allowing no-test reciprocity for land survey licenses for out-of-state previously licensed folks.
Which is nuts.
Which is, because there's a lot of very state-specific laws that go
Exactly.
into the land surveying. And I thought my understanding was recently that their more recent proposal was to keep soils and wetland and forestry and combine the natural sciences into a single board. But that may have changed because these things move very quickly. But I would 100% be in favor of our town planner providing a letter to, my understanding is the best avenue at the moment is to reach out to the state senate because it's going to go through the House no matter what, is my understanding. Or it already did, like today maybe, or like.
It would have just been voted on.
I think from a legal liability standard, for this board to be able to say, hey, a licensed person said this to us, right? Where if we have somebody just walks in and starts talking to us about it, and we make some change, we make some regulation, I think this board opens itself up to litigation.
I don't know how the state is going to police infractions on wetlands themselves, let alone
Right.
buffers. If the state is going to keep regulations on impacts directly to wetlands, right?
Right.
I'm not sure how they're going to
Right.
enforce that. You know, they're going to hire a professional, non-licensed professional who can back it up with a degree and experience, I guess, right? To dispute the landowner that flagged their own wetlands, I guess.
Right.
It's astonishing.
I think I heard you make a motion authorizing
Or-
the town planner to do that.
Yeah. I would just agree that we should extend it to all I think forestry, the forestry plans too, because that does impact us as well. Because we do have places in town where they're under forest management plans, and
Oh, good point.
I think
Yeah.
we want to continue to have licensed foresters as well.
So that's a good point. I guess I would caveat that, Bart, all this by saying, I'm assuming we have the authority to do this on our behalf?
To
Should we-
request Bart write this?
We have the ability as the planning board to write a letter to the Senate. We don't have to go through the town manager or town administrator or whatever.
I think so, an elected board.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, you're elected.
Yeah, okay.
I think it would be a good idea if Steve would co-sign it. Sure.
Yeah.
So is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Any more discussion?
I would say,
Jeff made the kind of combo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Patrick seconded it.
Yes.
I would suggest, I know a wetlands professional wrote to the governor, and the governor did respond. And the governor was very, I think this all stems from the governor and the OPLC, in restructuring the OPLC itself. It's extremely restructured through House Bill 2. And the governance of, even if they do keep a board, who oversees the board, it's going to be like the OPLC director that has like ultimate decisions over licensure and testing in a lot of these instances. So I would suggest we write a letter to the, I don't know if we'll do anything, but the governor as well, because that's where it's all coming out of.
I think that's a good idea.
Nationwide push to reduce licensure and restrictions to economic development.
The other one you mentioned, landscape architect.
Yes,
Yeah,
landscape
in the bill.
architects as well,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And,
It's like 89 different, I mean, real estate, the whole, real estate lobby is trying to lobby against this because basically they say you can practice real estate without a license.
Oh, good, I can start selling houses in town.
As long as you tell
Can I-
people you're not licensed.
Can I do a ride around with you for a couple of weeks so I know what to do?
So is this,
It seems counterintuitive if you think about it, to what New Hampshire represents, you know what I mean? Meaning, outdoors and preservation and, the environment. And saying you don't have to be licensed to be involved in that, like you don't have to be fully educated in that? What am I saying wrong about?
No, you're
Because
not.
it's live free or die.
Yeah, I guess
Right?
so, that's a good point, yeah.
But what is the issue is consumer protection,
Yeah.
right? So where are you?
Right.
Right, exactly.
Look, I'm generally speaking, I'm all for smaller government. But there are some instances where government is necessary to protect consumers,
Yep, I agree.
like Val said. I mean, if there was a license to be a dog walker, I would argue you don't need that. Anybody can walk a dog, but this is a little bit more technical. And with what's going on in the world today as far as the environment, all this stuff weighs into the environment.
Exactly right.
It all ultimately, flagging wetlands and soil scientists all impacts stormwater runoff,
Yeah, it's definitely going in the wrong.
flooding,
But part of the argument is that these things will still happen. That's the perspective that was put forth in the letter from the governors. These things, these protections will still happen. They will still be able to be policed. The people just won't be licensed necessarily by the state. That there's national organizations that will, I don't know, license people more locally.
So that, I
National
guess that's
license
like
people
Bar
that'll-
association would
Yeah,
be involved in
it's funny that they do
lots of
that and they don't
lawsuits.
license marijuana.
Yeah.
It sounds like somebody's using marijuana.
Right, so that's my question,
Well
like, when can you
played, Scott,
require
well
like
played.
some license, what do you reference, Can
Yeah,
can municipality say, oh, National Soil Scientists Association, like, can you say that, you need?
I suppose you can, but the question becomes, if we get to the point we had to do that, is there anybody around that does it?
Right.
Is it so somebody wants to do a subdivision, tell me they gotta hire somebody from Colorado to come out or something,
Or if licensing is for the health and, the general protection
Right.
of the health and welfare
Right.
of the residents of the state versus
Right.
what they say, and that's why we license people. And you're gonna give that oversight to an out-of-state group that's national, maybe in Missouri, or who
Right.
knows where it is, and you need to, if you want to petition something that happened within New Hampshire, is it gonna happen here?
Right.
Where's it gonna be? Where do you where do you take your grievance as a citizen of the state?
Right.
Is it, some
Right.
far off place here? Don't we want the government?
Yeah, we're giving up
themselves?
control,
You
we're
know?
giving up control, absolutely.
But it's hard to say what the best argument is, but if to better protect the citizens of our state, it seems the control within the state would be critical.
Yep.
And not consolidated in the director of the OPLC.
Right.
But it's left to professionals currently police themselves with lay people as part of the oversight boards, like the Board of Surveyors has surveyors on it that
Right.
will hear a complaint. And now it will go to OPLC head to decide if the boards should hear it. And they will have far more power over
Control of the boards.
control of the boards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially, they were talking about joining the
Yeah.
engineers and surveyors and only having 2 engineers and 2 surveyors,
Hmm.
and 1 layperson on the board, and imagine a surveyor like myself making a decision on a mechanical engineer,
Yeah.
making a mistake, and someone having a grievance. I have no idea.
Right, or vice versa.
Chemical engineer.
If I had to sit on a case about a land survey, I don't know, that's not what I do.
Right, and you may hold someone's license in your hands.
Right, exactly, their whole livelihood,
Right.
you know,
That's
so,
crazy.
yeah, it is, so, all right.
But
all right.
Where's the municipal association on this?
I'm sure I have to follow up on that.
All right,
Vote?
does anybody have anything else?
You were gonna vote on the motion.
Oh, we gotta vote, oh,
And
that's
we
right.
send
we
it
voted.
to the governor or the senate? Or
Both,
both?
both.
The legislature,
Okay,
the House votes later this week.
okay, so they haven't voted on it yet, all right. Okay, going, all right.
Any more discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And then, does anybody have any committee reports?
So the energy environment, the first hearing on the community power plan, aggregation plan will be next week, I believe, it's the middle of next week. Yes, and then there'll be another one in April, and then it'll come back to the town council to approve the aggregation plan and all that. You may have heard that the first towns that were approved have started rolling out their plans, like you had Nashua and some other towns that have already started their plans. So that's it, that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Jeff?
Real quick on conservation, we had a guest speaker from the University of New Hampshire, Stephen Jones, I believe is his name, last week. He was involved, or has been involved, in a pretty long-term study of fecal content in the Lamprey River.
Oh.
And the interesting part of it that I thought was the content, the extremely high content of, that produced by humans found at the Moonlight Brook and of the Lamprey River end of Moonlight Brook. And so he is working on expanding that study up along the brook to try to pinpoint sources as best they can.
Most of that area of town is Seward, right?
Right.
Yeah, but it's the watershed.
Shanda Park is where they test.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's the only site
Okay.
on the entire river
Okay.
that failed every single test.
Huh.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Everyone? Oh, so
Every
they,
single one.
so they're testing upstream.
So the good news is the river in general, really actually in very good shape, not having a lot of problems. They tested
Yeah.
Pecassac Landing too, where the boat launch is, great, no problems there. None of the other places on the river had any problems. It's just Moonlight Brook is the consistent,
At the outflow.
at the outflow right there, right where it's coming out of the culvert.
So they worry there's cross-contamination from sewer?
Well,
It's gotta be.
I mentioned a couple of things. I mentioned to him that there's a sewer main that crosses under the brook, I believe, right there, the one that runs behind the mill, below the mills, and goes to the pump station there.
That's right.
And I was like, maybe that thing's leaking. And then inflow from a high tide pushing any effluent from the treatment facility back into downtown.
Right.
They tend to,
Yeah.
they tend to
They're
test
taking
at
it at low tide, they're
Right,
taking it at low tide.
They do take it at low tide, but I wonder if it could be in the sediment.
Residual, yeah.
Residual in the sediment, because it would settle, I would think.
Yeah.
The change of tide, so.
They did used
Oh,
to
that
test
would-
below the dam, and they never got any hits below the dam, so you would think if it was coming out, it would would hit at that below the dam spot. I'm on the Lamprey Advisory Committee, so
Yeah, so
we
you know.
funded the study, so that's how I know all about it.
The
But
report is at the Lamprey River Advisory Committee site.
Yeah.
And
you can read it.
Oh, okay, good. I'll have to look that up.
Said, yeah,
basically what he told.
prior to the upgrade of the treatment plant, you'll have years and years of that effluent or discharge,
Oh,
right?
yes, I understand.
Impacting on the incoming tides.
Yeah, so it's still there.
Right, those, in the silts, I mean,
Could be.
obviously.
There's a lot
Yeah.
less silt up by the dam. It's mostly rock, I believe, right?
Yeah,
It's washed out.
I mean, I think he's kind of an expert in this,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I
Yeah, yeah.
think he's,
I'm not saying he's wrong. Yeah. I'm
He was
just,
just,
I was just- I was just
he just
off.
can't identify where it's coming from.
Right, that was all.
Yeah.
No, we just know
Right.
it's there at that site.
But the good part is it's not coming up from upstream.
No.
Right.
On the river.
On the
Yeah.
river, right, right.
It was found in a couple of places, in a couple of instances upriver, but nothing to the extent or amount that they found. But
Excellent.
mostly in the river, just so you know, there's bird and dog and cow, the top three, but bird shows up almost as much.
As to be expected, right?
Yeah. So that's
Cow was confusing, I guess, to some of the board members.
between cow and
Cow.
Well, because
Well-
it was in Moonlight Brook, that was
Yeah.
what was confusing.
It could have been the time that we had a petting zoo at the.
Well, it could be
We did
manure
occasionally
that
have-
somebody's spreading on a lawn or something,
Right.
but we don't really know.
Right, right. Okay.
What was the WC Field, wasn't it, I don't drink water because fish poop in it?
That's right. The only other thing, quickly, two other things I learned for the first time that mattresses and box springs are toxic waste, and I don't know if that's interesting to find, but food for thought. And the energy environment rep did mention that they're writing into the master energy.
Right, they're submitting it to us, they're not saying that they're, thinking that this is gonna automatically be adopted, but that's part of the process of what they're supposed to do in, with the Community Power Coalition, your towns are supposed to have an energy plan, or should have an energy plan, so they're incorporating this into that energy plan, so they're drafting an energy plan, and they understand that it's the board's prerogative, the planning board's prerogative, to actually, decide what goes in the plan.
As you mentioned, I'm sorry, I was looking at my notes while you were speaking.
Has the CONCON had any wetlands impacts, applications before you lately?
Nope, haven't seen them.
Nothing? No minor, no major, nothing?
Anybody else? Scott?
So we passed the ADU, was 100% fully supported by the town council, so that's
Nice.
now official. That was a lot of work on your part. The annual report's being dedicated to my provost. He gets a little award plaque.
Nice.
We updated the veterans tax benefit. It used to be 500, and it used to be only for veteran as defined when you're no longer in the military. We've updated it. We've increased it to 750, and now it's for people in the military as well as people who are veterans.
So the reservists?
And, well, it includes, you have to have served for 90 consecutive days to count. And so a lot of the reserve people get a 60-day basic training,
Oh.
and then they don't ever do a 90 consecutive days anytime in their career. So if you're in the National Guard and you get deployed somewhere, then you're going to get it. But it's not necessary.
I like that. The more we can do for our veterans, the better.
Yeah.
We don't do enough for them. Man, I love that.
And then we had the election. We had two successful candidates here. There were 3 seats on town council. One of them got elected, me, and the other 2, all the write-in candidates declined. And so if anyone wants to be in the town council, there's 2 openings right now.
I'm gonna quit the planning board, go back to the town council.
We're probably going to be advertising that.
I'll go for
and
that.
Someone can apply to.
Wow.
to
And then,
Has there been
It's
any
one for 1
discussion?
year,
Okay.
right, 1 year term.
Yeah, I thought there were 2 different terms. They're both 1 year?
Yeah, they're both gonna be.
They're gonna have to. be-
Scott, has there been any
Yeah.
discussion on the council or anywhere else about looking at all the boards in town and maybe making them smaller? Because it's getting harder and harder to get people to run. You know, you can go
Well,
from a
yeah.
7-person board to a 5-person board.
I think it's certainly worth
But-
looking at,
Yeah.
right? I currently have a proposal to the town council that, so I was trying to recruit a bunch of people to run, right, unsuccessful. And one of the things that I heard is, with town council, you have to do 2 meetings a month plus, like planning boards.
Yeah.
And if it's a relatively small group, you do 2, so that would be 4 meetings a month, right? So a lot of people think that's a lot of time and effort, right? So I have a proposal in it to change town council to 1 meeting a month. Some pretty big towns like Franklin only do 1 a month. But that's the only thing I could think of to try to make it more attractive.
That's a big commitment.
Yeah. But, you know, on the other hand, when somebody wants to build a big building, all of a sudden everybody's got time, right?
Yeah, but it's a defined, it's a specific
Yeah, but-
item for the short duration typically.
Yeah.
But, okay. Well,
So,
thank you.
We would certainly be open to any suggestions as to how to make it more attractive.
Is board size state statute or?
Yeah.
Is-
Commissions and boards are.
So they
Well,
all-
not definitive, it's a range.
It's a range, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know if we're at the lower or higher, is my question.
I was gonna look it up. So, yeah, we can look that up later. We don't need to look that up.
Yeah, we got a full board.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody have anything else to add?
I was a write-in.
Oh, were you?
Yes. So was I.
Did you beat Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and?
I beat somebody in a hat.
Were you?
Yeah.
When I used to count, the state came out and said,
When you won, there were 3 big
Yeah.
people writing in. Right?
Yeah.
So there was a
Yeah.
competitive
That's what I said.
election.
It's
Oh, yeah,
competitive,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I didn't
Yeah.
tell him right.
yeah, no, me, and
Yeah, I think I got
the,
5 votes.
the thing that, the thing that most people don't realize is that, when you're counting votes, the state, the election people, you have to count every write-in. It used to be, if somebody wrote Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse, you just ignore it. You actually gotta keep track of them now. You gotta count every write-in, so people that think they're being funny writing, Yogi Bear or something, you gotta take as much time to do that as it, it's painful, it's painful.
Town council gets to spend the night there,
Yeah.
making sure it's all done.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it's nuts.
I volunteered last November, and I'll tell you, it was one of the best things I ever did.
Yeah.
I found it to be very enlightening, and kudos to the staff. They did a fabulous job. And it was very enlightening to watch. It really was. I enjoyed it.
I did that for about 10 years. I stopped a couple years ago. It is very, it's fun.
Yeah,
It's
it's just
pretty
interesting to
much
see.
the same count, number of people. I mean, the snowstorm didn't really slow it down.
What was the total number of voters?
It was like 500.
Something.
Interesting.
480, but that's kind of what we normally get.
For just the
Yeah,
town.
right, yeah, right.
For a town person, no, that's not even 1% or 10%, so it's like half of 5%.
What of the eligible voters? We get 10,000 people in town.
Yeah, that's true. Total, I'm going
Yeah.
by total people in town, you're right, it's probably closer to 10% when eligible voters, yeah.
All right, does anybody have anything else?
Last item I want to bring up is that the clock is 1 hour off.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
And has
I've noticed that.
I don't know, a lot of people on this side of the room can't really see that screen, I know.
I would
Yeah.
like it over there.
Yeah, over
Yeah.
there, or
Yeah.
second screen in the
Yeah.
middle.
Yeah.
We usually
We're
have
having
a
that
lot of
conversation.
people,
Yeah.
Put right in front, right here. Pulls down,
That's right, drop in.
can sit back and drink coffee while everybody's talking. All right, if nobody has anything else, Miss
I
Jane?
have a job. My job is to say we're done.
All
I
right.
adjourn. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Sorry, Tim.
Anybody want to stay here a little bit longer and talk? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. See you next month.
Thank you.
Mike's off.